We only have one more weekend, guys, before we head to Boston for the second major of the year. And I just want to talk through some things about some of the teams on how they're performing. You know, the teams that have been surprising, the teams that have been lackluster, and everything else in between. And the first one that we have to talk about is OpTic Gaming, because OpTic currently is undefeated in the Stage 2 qualifiers. Scump retired. We all know Scump retired. It was a horrible day for Call of Duty, but maybe not really, because Scump ended up doing a watch party. It was unbelievable. I mean, I think majority of the time he had more viewers than the actual Call of Duty League channel, which I don't know how you want to look at that. That's good or bad. But regardless, talking about the actual team, Dashy was back in the starting lineup, right? And everyone was just kind of worried about how he was going to perform. You know, he has a lot of pressure on himself. And how was this OpTic roster going to perform? And they've lived up to expectations, I would say, so far. So as you guys can see here, OpTic is currently sitting at the top of the standings. Well, they're tied for first with Ultra. Well, no, they're in first, because they've only played 3 series. Toronto's played 4 with 30 points. They have a 9-5 map win-loss record so far. And it just makes you think, how have they been performing since Scump retired and adding Dashy to the roster? Now, when you go over to their matches in Stage 2, they played some pretty good teams, okay? They played Boston with Scump. Okay, that was his last series as a competitive player. Now, I'm sorry, I know this screen is very white, so if I flashbang you, that's on me. So they won that series versus Boston with Scump, and then they also Neslo'd, or they beat Seattle Surge in 2, 3, and 5. So both S&Ds in a control. And then they beat a very, very strong Toronto team 3-1. So if you just look at some of these stats, like I said, it has been close series. Besides the Toronto one, it's been close series. And the two that I want to talk about are Seattle and Toronto, right? Because that is with Dashy in the team, or in the starting lineup again. Seattle, it wasn't a dominant performance by any means, but it was OpTic's first series together, well, the new OpTic, and they were able to clutch up when it mattered. Seattle's not a strong S&D team, a very strong respawn team though, especially when Pred and Sib are playing up to their standards. They were able to clutch up, and then they had a more convincing win versus Toronto Ultra. And if you just look at the stats in this stage so far, they are 3-3 in hardpoint, 4-1 in S&D, 2-1 in control. So S&D has been kind of their bread and butter. Okay, but they've been solid. They've been solid at hardpoint. They have a 50% in that mode, and then control their 2-1. So they're solid across the board. So if we were comparing, this is from the Stage 1 qualifiers, right? Where OpTic was pretty much in the same boat. They were 3-3 in hardpoint, 3-2 in S&D, 2-2 in control. So very even across the board. Their kills per 10 minutes in the first stage were 84.2. Currently, right now, in the second stage, now this obviously is going to depend on the hardpoint maps that they pick as well. But you have that being an improvement. The overall KD in hardpoint is 1.01, whereas at Stage 1, they had 0.97. And then their engagements, 171.2 in Stage 1, 181.3. So, yes, you know, you have to look at what maps they played, because in Stage 2, they played 2 embassies, 3 hotels, and 1 fortress. And here they played 2 embassies, 1 fortress, 1 hotel, 1 hydro or mercado. So, you know, you have maps that are different, where you're going to have different numbers of engagements, whatever the case may be, but their pacing is up. Their pacing is up, which you love to see for this OpTic team. And that's across the board. Their deaths, their kills, their everything. Now, they still are 500 at hardpoint, but they are making improvements. They are trying to play at that faster pace with Hugh and Shotzi on the subs, and then Ilya and Dashy obviously running the ARs. S&D though, which is, like I said, has been their bread and butter. Everyone on the team has been fantastic in their 5 S&D so far. You know, Shotzi's coming in with the lowest overall KD with a 1.16 on the team, but he has 22% first blood rate. Compare that to Stage 1, Scump, 1.5, which was unbelievable. And then you have Dashy, Shotzi, both at a 1, Illy just at a 1.11. So it seems like so far, the team as a whole has been performing better in S&D. Also up in kills per round, first blood percentage, their overall KD, their engagements, which is obviously just barely 5.4 to 5.37. But once again, they've improved in every single category. And then lastly, for control, you have well, pretty much even across the board. You have a 102 out of Shotzi, 0.93 out of Hugh, 1.1 out of Ilya. Dashy's the only one that's been kind of struggling with a 0.82. And if we were to compare that, they average 67 kills per 10 minutes in stage 1, and they played 1 Asilo, 3 hotels. In stage 2, they're currently at 76.4, played 1 Asilo, 1 Fortress, 1 hotel. They are up by 7 kills. Their overall KD went down a little bit from a 1.07 to a 1.04, but their overall engagements, more than 21 engagements from stage 1 to stage 2. So this is just kind of telling me, and I mean, the eye test has told me this, but to have some stats to back it up is nice. It's telling me that OpTic has improved their pace, right? They're trying to play at a faster pace because they see teams like New York Subliners, probably the best team in the game right now, and just their level of aggression, right? And how much pressure they put on the other team. So OpTic, I'm excited to see how they end the stage 1 qualifiers, because like I said, all 3 of those matches were big matches. They were very tough matches, and OpTic had a tough schedule going into this. So if they can somehow end up 5-0, you have to feel good if you're an OpTic fan, right? Going to this Boston Major. And then just going down a little bit, Toronto Ultra doing their thing. They're 3-1, 10-4 map count. Their only series loss is to OpTic, where they lost 3-1. Boston Breach sitting at 2-1. NYSL at 2-1. LAG is another surprising one, just because they basically scrapped their whole team but Arctides, and they've been looking pretty good. They've been looking a lot better than they did in stage 1. And I mean, the bar's low for that, right? Because stage 1, it wasn't pretty. But if we go look at LAG's matches so far in stage 2, they lost a close one, 3-2 to Florida, and then they beat LAT 3-1 and Minnesota 3-1. So very convincing wins. The challenger players, the LAG challenger players, have been stepping up big time. I feel like RC's been stepping up big time. This is a team that has not lost a hardpoint in stage 2 in the qualifiers yet. They're 6-0 in hardpoint, 2-2 in S&D, and 0-3 in control. Now, the control is going to be an issue. They need to figure that out. But the fact that they've been so dominated in hardpoint, and if they can stay at least 50% in S&D, this team could make a little bit of noise at Boston. And you have Atlanta FaZe. They're 2-1 with a 6-5 map count. Who did they lose to? They beat NYSL. So FaZe, oh yeah, FaZe beat Seattle 3-0. Then they got 3-0 by Minnesota, which was interesting. And then they 3-2'd NYSL in a round 11 win. Their hardpoint has just been lackluster, as you can see so far in stage 2. They're 1-3 in hardpoint. They're 3-1 in S&D, 2-1 in control. So they need to figure out their hardpoint if they want to have an actual chance to win. You're not going to win a tournament realistically 2-3-5ing. It just isn't going to happen. Minnesota, they're kind of middle of the pack, 2-2. They're a very interesting team. They just seem super inconsistent to me. And then you have the bottom of the barrel. Well, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but these are just the teams that are just not performing well right now. It's going to be Florida Mutineers, Las Vegas Legion, LAT, London, and Seattle. Now, these are the surprising ones. I'm surprised LAT is this far down, just because I thought that they looked good in stage 1, and I thought they had a couple mistakes, but it looked like they had a lot to work on. And then going into stage 2, you just look at the qualifier. Now, I know they had to play 2 matches with Capsule because Kenny's been sick, right? But they lost 3-1 to NYSL, 3-1 to LAG, 3-0 to Toronto. Now that was with Cap, but then they beat London 3-0 with Capsule as well. It's just, this is not necessarily a hard schedule. You know, NYSL and Toronto, I think, are both very good teams. LAG also looks solid, but at the very least, you would like to see them 2-2. Hopefully, they can win their last match of the qualifiers. And, you know, if everything goes their way, they can sneak in to that top 8 to be in winners bracket. But Seattle Surge is another one, guys. They're 0-3. I don't know what's going on with them. Ever since the whole Pred to OpTic situation, it's not been pretty. They just haven't clicked at all. Their S&D has been abysmal. I mean, look, if I go check out their S&D, it's just like, this team has so much potential, but they're just so bad at S&D. They lost 2-3 to Las Vegas, 0-3 to Atlanta, and then 2-3 to Texas. And like I said, they have yet to win an S&D. They're 3-2 in hardpoint, 1-2 in control, 0-5. So they just can't figure it out in that mode. I mean, if you take a look at their KDs too, 0.57, 0.74, 0.86, 0.44 in S&D. So they're just not getting it done at all when it comes to S&D. And realistically, it's just very lopsided. Even in the hardpoints, you have Sid with a 138, Pred with a 128, and then Mac with a 0.89, accuracy with a 0.84. Control, you have accuracy with a 114, Pred with a 102, but then you have Mac and Sib with 0.74, 0.83 respectively. So they have a lot of issues they need to work on. I think that this weekend and the second major is going to be important for a lot of teams. You know, I could see multiple teams making a roster change if things don't go well. You know, I could definitely see Minnesota. I could definitely see Florida. I could definitely see London. I could definitely see maybe Seattle surge, depending on how they do. Maybe Boston. I feel like, I mean, maybe even OpTic, depending on if they do flop. But the way OpTic looks right now, they look pretty damn dominant. And I think a lot of that comes down to just the overall pace of the team so far in the second stage. We're going to see this weekend how they perform because they do have 2 more matches, which it'll be interesting. If they can secure that first seed, that'll be big for them. At the absolute worst, though, no matter what, even if they go 0-2, they are going to be in the winner's bracket. So I don't know. I'm excited. I want your guys' thoughts on, you know, how all these teams have been stacking up so far. I know a lot of you guys are OpTic fans, and a lot of you are going to be hyped with how they've been performing. A lot of you are probably going to hate the Los Angeles Thieves and be like, oh, LA Thieves, trash, whatever. But just talk to me about your favorite teams, how they've been performing, and what you expect the top 8 to look like when we finish out in the last matches this weekend. As always, guys, I appreciate the love. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See y'all when I see y'all.